The evolution of modern digital photography is increasingly defined by code rather than physical silicon alone. The deployment of major firmware releases has fundamentally altered the camera acquisition lifecycle, converting static hardware purchases into evolving, software-defined imaging platforms. Among current mirrorless offerings, few cameras demonstrate this paradigm shift as dramatically as the Nikon Z8. With the rollout of Firmware 3.0, Nikon did not simply patch minor bugs or introduce cosmetic menu tweaks. They systematically expanded the operational ceiling of the camera, delivering capabilities that traditionally required purchasing a next-generation body. This massive functional evolution raises a critical question for working professionals, commercial studios, and passionate enthusiasts. Has the transformation brought by Firmware 3.0 rendered the immediate need for a physical Nikon Z8 II entirely obsolete? To evaluate whether a hardware successor remains a necessity, one must first dissect the sheer computational weight of what Firmware 3.0 brought to the table. At the center of this update is the integration of advanced multi-shot computational workflows, most notably the fusion of pixel shift shooting with focus shift and auto exposure bracketing. In traditional camera architectures, capturing an ultra-high-resolution composite file required a rigid studio setup, manual stepping, and laborious desktop stitching. Firmware 3.0 streamlined this pipeline directly within the body's processing routines, allowing the 45.7 megapixel full-frame stacked CMOS sensor to shift at subpixel increments to capture composite files up to an astounding 180 megapixels. For landscape photographers demanding extreme fine art printing capabilities, architectural documentarians capturing intricate facade details, and commercial product photographers needing unmatched textural fidelity, this feature effectively quadrupled the native resolving power of the sensor, without introducing the severe thermal and noise penalties associated with physical 60-plus megapixel sensors. Beyond raw pixel counts, Firmware 3.0 radically enhanced the real-world intelligence of the Nikon Z8 subject tracking algorithms. Building upon the XP7 image processing engine, the firmware update introduced deeper neural network models tailored for complex movement vectors. Aircraft detection was refined to distinguish between commercial airliners, military jets, and small acrobatic gliders across vast sky distances, holding lock-on even through cloud cover or heat haze. Bird detection saw significant gains in foliage penetration, allowing the autofocus system to ignore foreground branches and latch onto tiny avian eye targets in densely wooded habitats. Furthermore, human subject recognition received a massive overhaul in backlit and low-contrast scenarios, enabling the camera to track facial geometry and eye coordinates down to lower exposure thresholds without focus hunting or dropping lock during erratic subject movements. The operational speed and buffer handling of the camera were similarly transformed. Firmware 3.0 expanded the implementation of pre-release capture, allowing photographers to record full-resolution sequences up to a second before fully depressing the shutter button. In high-speed action, sports photojournalism, and unpredictable wildlife encounters, this single software feature regularly makes the difference between capturing an iconic split-second frame and missing the peak action entirely. Combined with expanded RAW compression choices, including high-efficiency RAW options that preserve dynamic range while drastically cutting file sizes, the camera's internal clearing speeds were optimized to handle sustained 20 frames per second RAW bursts and up to 120 frames per second high-speed JPEG capture without choking the dual CF Express Type B and SD card slots. Video shooters received equally transformative operational enhancements through software refinements. The Nikon Z8 was already an internal video powerhouse, boasting 12-bit NRAW recording at up to 8K at 60 frames per second and 4K at 120 frames per second. Firmware 3.0 built upon this foundational strength by introducing refined display overlays, precise waveform monitor sizing, custom focus distance indicators, and expanded zoom speed controls during electronic high-res zoom shooting. The addition of customizable red rec frame indicators, dedicated shutter angle options instead of standard fractions of a second, and fine-tuned base ISO display toggles for N-Log recording brought the camera's internal interface significantly closer to dedicated cinema standards. These software improvements eliminated the need for external monitors and third-party rig attachments on solo documentary shoots, streamlining the physical footprint of the camera while preserving broadcast-grade capture quality. Despite these massive software achievements, it is equally important to conduct an unvarnished